Obviously, a lot of Dems upset at the idea of President Trump coming out of this. But to Eric's point earlier, he did campaign on it. American people did vote him as president. So isn't he just fulfilling a mandate by the American people?
Yeah, but for the most part, understand that Democrats don't see climate change as a political issue. The way we would see it, when you start talking about how much is it going to cost to fix it, from our perspective, it would be like if you're in a boat that has a hole in it and you're surrounded by sharks and you're debating how much it's going to cost to fix the hole. At that point, you shouldn't. So if you believe in that climate change is real, as most scientists do, then the issue of jobs is much less important.
Hey, Garland, we may be in a boat, but it certainly doesn't have the hole or the leak that you're describing it, and the sharks aren't ready to attack us in the boat. What we're talking about is, you know, over centuries, over hundreds of years, you're talking about a degree or two of which the United States of America is going to pony up a vast majority of the cost of keeping that climate down 1 or 2 degrees over 100 years.
You know, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, as many climate scientists do, you know, believe, is that we're in a much worse situation, and we're not talking about leaving a world to our children. We're talking about leaving, you know, nothing to our children.
Let's get Kirsten in here real quick. So for a lot of people, and I think these two are perfectly highlighting, it's a debate around economics, it's a debate around politics, but it also, you know, when we talk about our children and millennials, and we're of that generation,
yes,
and Kat as well, what does it mean for us long term?
Well, the good thing, you know, as a conservative and, you know, very much for limited government, you believe that the market and consumers should drive these kinds of changes rather than an international governing body or a treaty, an international treaty, forcing these issues. And the good thing, I'm optimistic because millennials are very conscious about waste, about trying to rely on renewable sources of energy increasingly. And what's interesting, so I can be optimistic in that regard that if Trump does pull out, that we'll see consumers in the marketplace really driving a move toward greener energy. But also, just from a democratic point of view, the Obama administration actually signed on to this treaty without having it ratified by 2/3 of the Senate. Right. And our Constitution says that in order to participate in international treaties, you have to get it ratified by 2/3 of the Senate, and obviously electable to the American
right.
people.
Well, what he did was he kind of branded it as being a piggyback off of what Bill Clinton got ratified with regards to climate, which, of course, we're talking about the kind of numbers. It's not the same thing. It is a larger number. And
much larger.
There's no question that the reason that he didn't do it was because people wouldn't have voted for it. I think that what Trump should do is make it an actual treaty, get Congress involved. I do think that we certainly need to be paying attention to the climate. I certainly think that that's important. But to just throw a number out there, which even though we're not beholden to it, lobbyists can use it to push for regulations, very, very strict regulations. Let's go through the proper channels and do it like an actual treaty.
Great, except you'll never get that through Congress. You will not get that through a Congress that is both Senate and House Republican control.
At the current levels, you probably wouldn't.
Allow me to do this. So I don't want to come off as a climate denier. I am certainly not that. I know the climate changes. We may be even warming. I'm not positive, but we may be. And it may be an issue. But here's the economics of it, Ebony. You point that out. China and Brazil are going to pollute. Even if they sign this treaty, they're going to pollute. If they're polluting more than they're supposed to, there is no indication that they're even going to hold up their end of the treaty afterwards. So what happens is we'll be here, go ahead, forking over all this money, and our companies won't be able to compete with the Chinese or the Brazilian companies because they're being penalized and they're paying the fees, which the Chinese government and the Brazilian government will not make their companies pay off.
Can I put out a different premise? So let's take this agreement off the table, because I think we almost all agree it's not really that good. It hasn't been that well negotiated, and we could do a better job of it. But when we talk about the economics, Eric, and again, I'm someone who's very concerned about this nostalgic economic model where we can benefit, I think, all by moving forward and having more jobs in the technology space and solar powers. There's no harm in it. So what if...
No harm in what?
No harm in moving our jobs and our economic model towards a futuristic, more technology-based model.
You mean away from manufacturing?
No,
that's
fine.
Right? This is a great idea, but it should be, as Kirsten points out,
driven by the
market, not by penalizing manufacturing companies.
Okay, Garland wanted to get in.
Yeah, but if you're going to argue that the market is going to fix it, the fact of the matter is, if climate change is real, then it is the single greatest failure of the market. So how could the market fix something that it actually created?
Well, you mean because people are still relying heavily on things yesteryear?
Because manufacturing has relied on fossil fuels, and if it's real, then and it's
Garland, you do realize it. I mean, I know you do. You and I have worked together for 8 years. Pollution is fungible, like money. It's fungible. So if you're polluting in China, Brazil, or any of the other developing nations, we're still breathing that pollution. It's not going anywhere. It's not staying in China. We're sharing it as a globe. So when you put our U.S. corporations at a financial disadvantage to the rest of the world, we're not saving the planet unless everyone.
But how do we incentivize? How do we incentivize them moving to the new model? Do you have any? I don't know.
Well, part of it is already happening. You know, the concerning thing is Elon Musk did come out today and say that he would possibly, come off the advisory board. But just in thinking about the environment and the climate, this agreement wouldn't even lower the temperatures. They would still go up 3 degrees, which everyone says is unnecessarily risky. So if we're really caring about the climate, this treaty, as it stands, doesn't do it.
So lots of people having problems with the agreement as it stands, Kat. But again, my big question is, if I want to move to that technologically based model, how do we incentivize? Because I don't really like over-regulations either, but how do we incentivize people to get to that a little bit quicker?
Right, and it absolutely is tough. I think that with younger generations, people are, as you were saying, they're more and more interested in climate change. And that is where we also just have to, even if not for the environment, even for the, because other countries are, that is where other countries are moving. We have to move there too. We can't be the only country that we're just by ourselves running on coal, so that won't help us either. We can't be the people that are taking the lead, and we have such strict regulations that we can't compete with China. And Eric, that's a great point, and I completely agree. We can't completely destroy ourselves economically for the sake of a couple of degrees, but at the same time, even just speaking politically and economically, we can't be all the way over here and on coal. So I think that we do need something, a little bit of a hybrid. I think that the one now is way too strict and would be destructive to our economy, but we do need to do something.
Allow me to address your question. Yeah. How do we incentivize? Well, we certainly don't incentivize by penalizing. That has never worked in any industry. But to incentivize implies that some government or body is going to pay for you to make a transition. You're a corporation. You're a business owner. To go from a manufacturing business to let's say, a software company. Or a software company.
Sure.
But so you're saying, how do you the market incentivizes? When
people have to want it.
Say, I'll pay more for this iPhone because it's being produced in a country where the climate is being protected, that's when it happens. But it's got to start at a grassroots level, not a penalizing stage or an incentivizing stage.
So it's up to us, America.